Oh no, I'm stuck in the house. Hello and welcome to episode 316 of the Crate and Crowbar. It is the 26th of March 2020, and joining me in this internet room is Alex Wiltshire.
Hello.
And Marsh Davies.
Hello.
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 Hello. Hello. Would you like to continue trying to figure out what's wrong with microphones and or the internet for an hour, or should we do a podcast?
I think this is good content. It's been good content for the past 43 minutes. So why not continue?
Yeah. So we are, for reasons that would be obvious to everyone on Earth, recording our first ever remote Crate and Crowbar, the thing we said we would never do. These lengths we've now been forced to go to by Jeff Keighley. So off the top of the bat, I just wanted to say that this is a bit of an experimental process. Things are probably going to go a little wrong, or, you know, audio may be not what you're used to. So for that reason, this may be a little bit of a shorter podcast than usual. And please forgive us if we are bad at this format. It's weird for me to not be able to kind of try and make someone uncomfortable by staring at them when they're talking. So I really don't know how I'm going to handle this new medium personally. And as a second opening point, I hope everyone in the community is keeping well and as well as possible in this very strange time. I know it's a bit of a serious note, but so everyone should know my Epson software updater has informed me that there is a firmware update for my printer, and it would like to install it right fucking now.
Life finds a way.
The Epson software updater, in many ways, the moth of the digital realm.
Cockroach.
I'm going to exit without installing, but maybe we'll see a little bit more from that happy pop-up friend later in the episode. But yes, hope everyone in the community, everyone listening is doing well. This is how this podcast is going to work for the foreseeable, he said, shrugging. So we'll figure it out. We'll make the content happen. We're going to do some news, but a little bit of different kind of news. Alex.
Yeah?
Do you want to tell us the story?
I'll deliver some news. Yeah, I was, this is like a little bit, because we didn't do a pod last week, we would have talked about it in last week, but, early last week, I was very interested to read about, Google Stadia's, plans for using machine learning to make the games. And, there've been some interviews with, Erin Hoffman-John, who leads their R&D department, talking about the wonderfully named technology they've put together called Chimera. Tell me, if you came up with some technology which is a bit frightening for, you know, lovers of things that are made and designed by human beings, and you know, would you choose the name Chimera? Because I would.
I think maybe something like Art Render or you know, Freelance Terminator 5000 or something like, you know, something along these lines would be better as, but you know,
yeah, the Obsoleta or something.
Yeah,
like that.
exactly.
So like this thing is like it is designed, and you know, like, you know, the reasoning behind it is entirely just logical for today's kind of reality, which is, hey, it's difficult to make games. Why not get the humans to do the kind of proper creative stuff and get computer to do the general sort of repetitive, boring stuff. But one of the examples they used is, hey, you know, CCGs, all those cards, they need art on them. Why not get a computer to do the art? And so they trained Chimera to on a load of cards to do sort of CCG card art. And it's weird, actually. I did see it when I first looked at the news story, and now the news story has none of the art on it. I was going to share it with you too, but it's all gone, and I can't find anything online of it. It's like, maybe we shouldn't have let that out, because it was bad. It was pretty bad, but bad in that kind of, well, it's clearly going to get better kind of bad, and like my initial kind of response was, oh dear, this can't be allowed to happen, because games are made by people, and that's the most exciting thing about games, and the card. The art on CCG cards is a great, huge, important part of appreciating CCG. So I was appalled, but then I kind of started thinking, well, I play a lot of games which are procedural, and that procedural system has been created by people making lots of decisions. They are very human made, even if lots of what I'm actually experiencing is automated based on those decisions. And I'm trying to figure out, like, where does the line between, okay, the gains of a small team being able to make a big game, and being able to automate a load of stuff, versus the losses of total human control over stuff. Where does that go? And then
I have to admit, I had a few kind of eyebrow-raising responses to at least one of the interviews that you linked, Alex, which, because obviously one of the things this is being touted as being able to do is to allow a team, a modest-sized team or a small team, make World of Warcraft, right? To take away the asset generation thing. The first question I would ask is that a problem anyone has? Are there teams of, I don't know, 5 to 10 to 20 people out there going, like, the only way for us to be viable and realize our dreams as game developers is to make a sprawling MMO which needs loads of variants of different kinds of goblin. Like, I don't know. I mean, I imagine there are small teams out there that would love to grow and make a bigger game, but I don't know if that's, I don't know. It doesn't strike me as, I can't think of, this is the question, right? There are no examples of, small indies turning out a massive game and that being a huge success. There are plenty of examples of small, or smaller indie studios doing a modest-sized project being hugely successful.
Yeah.
Like something like, say, The Spire or Dead Cells or something like this.
Because I have come across quite a lot of projects. So there have been a lot of small teams trying to do big games in, oh gosh, what's that London-based company that's making the kind of networky special, Improbable?
Oh, Improbable, yeah.
Yeah. So there are lots of small teams making very big games there, because that's like MMO technology. But I think you're dead right to say, where are the kind of the examples of that being success? Because you do get quite a lot of, get the odd kind of small team making big game thing. Certainly, though, my experience of working in a small team, expectations of the wider world are, is it going to be like World of Warcraft? Like this, when I worked at Hello Games, we want it to be a huge game. We want everything to be unique. We want, and that was the solution for Hello Games when making No Man's Sky was procedural it up the Bajacksie.
As they say. I think that's what it said in that trailer, wasn't it?
That is the technical term. It was yeah.
Every atom of the Bajacksie.
Every Bajacksie is a procedural.
Yeah, you're right. I suppose the more accurate way of saying what I was trying to say is, like, is scale itself a problem developed stuff? Like, is scope the only thing people are looking for? They have other options beyond, I will train an AI to solve this problem. The other thing that really stood out to me was there was a part of the article that talked about using machine learning to balance games, and balance a card game, in this example. And that is one of those things, like, so this whole conversation is like, an exercise for me in, like, it's like a Takeshi's Castle of hot takes, where I want to get my hot take to the end of this segment and for Mike Cook to still, be smiling and nodding rather than dourly shaking his head. One of those two things is true at the moment, and I currently live in an uncertainty. I don't know if this is a desirable use for machine learning on the basis that, well, I'll say this, for both balance and for broader issues of, like, they say, the AI can be brought in to design visual elements to communicate certain things. These aren't absolutes. Neither of those outcomes for this tool account for feel, really. Like, you might want the art to, you can say, I would like this to look less like a bird and more like a fish. But the decision of whether that feels right for the game and what consistency feels like across the game and what the art as a whole expresses, all of that stuff is so, all of that stuff requires a human. Similarly, the goal of the goal of game balance is not necessarily perfect balance.
No, sure.
And so, like, an AI might be able to help you find outliers or something like that, but so can a good designer. And
I think so.
Yeah.
I can sort of, I can just see all their counter arguments. So they would argue, I would imagine, that sure, balance isn't about making everything fair, and it's not, and game feel. Well, that's best placed in the hands of a human designer, and why not let them focus on that sort of important stuff, while the machine learning thing chunders around in the numbers and discovers that, well, people are using this particular weapon more than any other. Is there and highlighting it as a possible problem? Like, why waste your skilled designers' time and effort on stuff that is boring like that, and get them to think of the solutions as a result? I mean,
yeah, but at that point, is that still, this is something where someone who's more expert in AI than me would be able to win. At that point, is that still machine learning? Because that just sounds like good analytics. Like,
yeah. Well, I think the machine learning thing is like, you give it a bunch of numbers, and you don't need to do the statistician thing of asking specific questions of it. The machine learning will surface stuff to you without you having to think about it so heavily that you may as well just do it yourself, sort of thing.
Yeah. I
feel like this is a tool that's meant to be used for very specific purposes. I think you're right, Chris, that you couldn't just let this loose on a game, and it's not going to tell you how it feels about the various scenarios that it encounters, but it is a way of sort of brute forcing basic QA. Yeah. In games in which the kind of options available to you are quite prescribed. Again, it wouldn't be useful in the context of, say, an MMO, or even a game like No Man's Sky, where there's quite a large field in which the player can operate and do many different things, and it's more about the experience of being in that environment. But in a game which is, for example, a turn-based game where you just want to, or a CCG where you essentially want to see how people fall down this pachinko machine of options that you've given them, then I could see that just letting an AI bash its head against your game repeatedly could be a way of finding statistics that are useful to you as a designer.
Yeah.
I can definitely see sorry, go on.
Well, I was going to say, actually, in terms of the art thing, in terms of an AI just generating huge reams of art, I can see that being useful as well in certain circumstances. In fact, I was trying to do this earlier today. Not specifically for a video game, but I've been playing around with an idea for a board game which would involve lots of portraits of various different aristocrats. And in my lazy way, I was thinking, well, maybe I could just see if there's an AI generator for 18th century portraiture, like a GAN breeder thing. I don't know have you guys used GAN breeder?
GAN breeder, what is it?
It's there's a lot of different kinds of sort of AI image breeding tools now, which are all a lot of fun to play with. GAN breeder, I don't know if that GAN breeder is like a kind of breeding machine, or whether that's some sort of brand name. I don't really understand exactly where these words come from, but it allows you to plug in a bunch of different source files, and then you can change the different sliders, and it's incredibly good at creating everything from fortresses to submarines and strange spaceships to more organic things. None of them look finalized, but they are an amazing starting point for artists to overpaint. And so there's incredibly talented concept artists like Pascal Blanchet, who's really got into using GAN breeder to create amazing different forms and shapes, and there's obviously a bit of skill to it. I don't think that AI stuff will create like an end point for game art, but it's at least not now. But it's an incredibly good starting point, I think, to create interesting forms. But to go back to the portrait generator thing, what I discovered is that yes, you can you can generate a huge number of 18th century portraits, and not only that, but I went to the site where it advertised itself as being a sort of portrait generating thing, and it has a bunch of base files that you can use, which range from photography to illustrations to art. But you can also upload your own source images. Copyright gets a bit murky here, I think, but you're safe with 18th century portraiture, I think, unless the photographs of the portraits are copyrighted. I don't know that.
Shit.
But I noticed that the site was, because you can see what portraits people have made public recently,
right,
created, and it's obviously a great resource for phishing scams, because there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pretty 20-year-old women
amazing.
that have been generated by this thing, all with names with numbers after them. So it's there's something. Somebody's making really good use of it. I'm not sure it's video games yet, but I.
Oh wow! Because it's like that this person does not exist.
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean,
but
that's great as well.
You can actually see, like, you can actually tell what that has generated, because even though they look really supernatural, supernaturalistic, I should say, not supernatural. It'd be nice if they did. This ghost
person
does
doesn't
not
exist. Yeah, this is a vampire.
but there is like a completely, and you don't notice it until you're told about it, but like, their pupils are always in exactly the same location in the image, and every single one. And as soon as you realize, oh my god, finally we've gamed it until it kind of leapfrogs us again.
Yeah, you can definitely detect when they are fake if you scrutinize the pictures. But I mean, I don't know that really matters if you're generating card art or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, this isn't a real chimera. I think as soon as you start to, my screen just switched off. This is exciting. What a medium.
Get some NVIDIA updates on the go. Come on,
hell
Chris.
yeah. Let's see. What else could possibly decide to, why is my printer open in two separate windows? That's not going to come back to bite me. As soon as you, like, I admit to being skeptical about this kind of thing, but I think on reflection, I'm more skeptical about the way this stuff is marketed and the way this does the rounds in the press.
Yeah.
Every now and then, than the fundamentals of technology, because I agree. Like, I think there are obviously bespoke uses for stuff like this tailored to specific games. That's definitely not what's being discussed here, because these things are always discussed in terms of packages that can be rolled out all at once. And I think one weakness in the way this stuff tends to be either marketed or promoted is there's a desire, I think, to sum up everything this technology can do into a single technology. I think that into a single game, sorry. And I think this very similar thing happened actually with Improbable and other companies doing cloud-based stuff, where the desire was, how do we express this using a game that uses all of this at once? And this is very rarely a game that you necessarily really want to play. And similarly, a game that is entirely generated is not something you really want to play. And so they're kind of forced, I think, into this cul-de-sac of like, well, a card game might be able to be fully rendered by this thing.
Yeah.
But that's not actually really a desirable use for it. I can see the value in something like machine learning as a QA resource for indies that do not have the budget for a QA department.
Yeah.
For a game that warrants it. That's actually a pretty good idea, like some kind of service that games can be plugged into.
And I do wonder, like, say the Spire is an amazing game, obviously, and, their ability to balance that game is sort of, close to unparalleled, in two people teams, that I'm aware of. What if that team was given a tool like this? What kind of game could they do, knowing that they weren't limited to what two people can do in terms of game balancing data, kind of, churning through that data. And I think that's the other side of it is, anything that generates a random effect is a random set of stimuli is a good prompt for creativity. That's basically what you were saying, right, Marsh? That you can use this sort of thing to form the baseline for a cool idea that still uses all your aesthetic sensibilities. I do feel like that's a much less sexy pitch for
AI assisted game development than the one they're going with. And I understand why they're going with the one that they're doing, but
yeah,
it strikes me. Yeah,
it feels like they want to say press a button and it'll make a game for you, and it's probably not. How
and like,
although that is what Stadia needs.
And whereas like but what the reality is like press a button and we'll create a whole bunch of things that might be the monster you wanted. And some of them might make you think of a better monster, and then you'll draw that.
Yeah.
And that's I'm glad that exists, but yeah.
That's it. I think this stuff will get up to a point where it will make... I mean, if you look at the games that are out there, we were talking... I don't want to dunk on the game that we were all dunking on privately today, but there are games out there that have really fucking generic, boring art. And I think we will get to the point...
This feels like we can dunk on it.
Can we? Can we dunk? Do we have it within ourselves at this time of crisis just to merrily shit on another game?
I don't think I do, honestly.
No. But I think we'll get to a point pretty quickly where, the 1 million goblins generated by an AI will be up to some sort of acceptable mass market standard. But I think what we'll find is that...
But not yours.
No, obviously. My goblins are very high class, Alex. I think we'll come to appreciate things which are more personal and intimately created. And I think we'll find that, at least discerning people will. I'm sure there'll still be a market for stuff which is just, generalized, generated trash. But, I think we will want a personal connection. We will want somebody to have made a thing for us. This is also almost the opposite of the talk of the death of the artist on the last podcast. Like, I think we'll, as a society, wish to resurrect the artist and then have tea
Make
with
them fight a Terminator.
Yeah.
Death of the Artist 2. Judgment Day. Sorry, I've ruined your point there, which is a good point.
No.
Hey, the idea of an artist fighting a Terminator that segues really neatly into the game that we're probably going to be talking about later on, or maybe now.
We could even talk about it now if you like.
Yeah. Doom Eternal.
Maybe
there's not much art in it, but I like it.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of art in that game. But it's... Boy, so we've all played Doom Eternal, right?
Yes.
How deep into the gore pit have you descended?
I've done the gore nest.
I've just got to the gore nest.
I don't know what the gore nest is, so I assume I haven't got there.
Have you done the first boss fight, Marsh?
I don't know. What was the first boss fight with?
You'll know.
Yeah, it makes a big song and dance about it. You'll know.
Did I do it?
It's like it's some kind of demon man. It's like it's like the top half of a Satan, the bottom half of a hovercraft.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. No.
Right. Have you got the super shotgun?
No.
Oh, okay.
Come along now.
All right. No, that's fine. I just wanted to place everyone's experience. So Alex is the most experienced Doomman, but otherwise, yeah.
Doomateer.
So, yeah, I don't know how to embark on this really. Because I had really weird first impression of it, and I wanted to see what everyone else thinks, basically.
I mean, my first impression, and I think that this is fairly universal, is, oh my god, I can't hold all the bits and pieces in my head at once. There's because I thought, okay, so I really loved Doom 2016 as it's become named, which is kind of a shitty name, but there you go. I really loved its feel. I loved huge amounts about it. One of the things that just never really applied to me is it's kind of one of its core economies, which was the idea that you'd be getting ammo off. I just never used the chainsaw basically, and the chainsaw in the first one was also designed to give you ammo, but I never did. This game has been really lots of attention has been put into making sure you engage with its core kind of triumphant kind of economy, where chainsaw things and you get ammo. You never have very much ammo, and you're constantly running out of it per weapon. So you're constantly switching between weapons and constantly thinking about how you're going to get more ammo. You're constantly thinking about health, like everything hits like a steam train. So your health bar is just zipping up and down all the time. And so you do glory kills to get your health back. And then you can get armor by setting stuff on fire. But I don't think that it's fully, like, this is just emblematic of its systems, where there are so many systems and so many things you're collecting and thinking about, or meant to be thinking about any time, that I generally have forgotten about flaming things. I never think about armor unless there's a green thing to pick up off the floor. And so there's a lot about its economy which seems almost irrelevant a lot of the time, until I die, in which case I care about it, but that's far too late. And that's basically my Doom experience so far. Like thrilling, fast-flowing action, enjoying the fight, and then I die and I think, oh, for God's sakes, I didn't flame something so I had armor, or oh, why didn't I chainsaw something so that I had ammo?
So I had a breakthrough with it literally today, where I went from that side of, and I'm before where you're at in the game, but I had a moment where it really finally clicked, and I realized, and it was partly triggered by something Tom Senior had said, which is that it's, I'm pretty sure it's Tom, basically, it's a Devil May Cry game, which surprised me. It really is, like, it is obviously a first person shooter, but it has a very similar progression in terms of your understanding, where you are overwhelmed very quickly by the amount of weapons and techniques and things you need to pay attention to, and you initially ignore everything your brain can't handle, like combos or something like that. And then there comes a point where I think you legitimately learn how to see all of the opportunities that it's presenting to you to use abilities in certain ways. And it's really clear to me that with this game, and it's actually, I think it's strikingly different to Doom 2016, despite having a lot of the same vocabulary. It seems it's obvious to me that they built this very, very ornate sort of FPS combat sandbox first, and then everything else came after that. So, as you mentioned, the shoulder-mounted flamethrower that sets people on fire. When they're on fire, if they take damage, they drop armor. The chainsaw that gives you ammo, the glory kills, which are when an enemy is low on health, you can execute them, which gives you an invulnerability window and health and time to think. That was one of my like little plateau leaping moments, was, oh, the glory kills are when you look at your cooldowns and plan your next thing. It's like, and then the way that different weapons interact with different enemy types, the fact that enemies have specific weaknesses that aren't maybe weapon specific, but different weapons are better at exploiting them. Your movement, which is now this mixture of, obviously running, double jump, double dash, monkey bars, and, the fucking incredible grappling hook, which, that's when I asked if you had the super shotgun yet, because a lot of this came in around the moment for me where you get the super shotgun, which is the traditional sort of breech-loaded double-barrel shotgun, but it now has this enemy targeting grapple line on the bottom of it, which grabs an enemy and pulls you towards them, but you have a decent freedom of movement when you're moving towards them to whip yourself around and behind them. And then this all kind of combos with its like system of like plug-in modifiers, the runes. So I think if you're struggling to figure out what the game's about, the best combo I can recommend is unlock the rune that lets you slow down time if you hold down right mouse button when you're in midair.
Yeah.
And combine that with the grapple hook, which is also a right click, and you get these incredible, like, slow-mo grapple navigations through crazy piles of gibbery demons, and it feels amazing. And then that sort of evolved for me into realizing, oh, you don't have to be thinking about the flamethrower all the time. You need to learn to recognize the situations where the flamethrower is good. So, for example, there are rubbish zombie enemies that seem to only there to get in your way. They don't have a ranged attack. They don't do very much, but they occasionally appear in kind of groups. and if you see them, they are essentially an armor pickup by a different name.
Yeah.
They're like an active armor pickup.
Or health. They're just a pickup, basically.
But what I'm saying is, like, so glory kills, everyone can get you health, and actually bigger enemies get you more, so that's the way you should be thinking about that. Clusters of zombies give you shitloads of armor, and specifically armor if you set them on fire and just, smash them all at once. And so that's the thing that really started to make it work for me, was realizing, you can, it's that weakness where it's a broad enough system and a granular enough system that you can get through it in lots of different ways. But there's sort of, efficiencies and optimization to find, and sort of ways of, like you said, your health is always zipping up and down. That I find a really kind of fun and exciting thing when combined with what is effectively a series of boss-style combat arenas where in normal boss fight, your health gets really low, something's gone seriously wrong, whereas in this, it's just the next situation you have to deal with. You spend your health to achieve a particular thing.
Exactly.
Really. And then you're off in a different direction. You have lots of different options for getting your health back, but that's going to be situational and based on the speed with which you can make decisions and stuff. I've gone from being like, have they overcomplicated this, to now really, really loving it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with all of that. And it's like I think for a lot of, something that a lot of people would bounce off of, I can imagine, is that, we've all been trained that health is something that to be hoarded, and, if that dips below 50, you get worried, that's a bad thing, and it's going to take a lot of effort to get it back again. And this is a game where you just get used to the little whoop whoop when warning, when it dips below, 50 or 40 or something, and then, that's fine, I will glory kill and it's all fine. It's under control. And that feeling.
Do you think the game is, cheating a little in order to allow you to survive when you're at low health? Because sometimes I get taken down to like a tiny sliver of health, and yet I then persist at that level of health probably for a remarkable amount of time before suddenly recovering all of my health. And I wonder if the game is just kind of creating a sense of peril and then actually withholding actual peril, which is good. I'm saying this is a great thing.
Yeah, I think one thing that helps is there are basically no hit scan weapons in it. So if you're bouncing away and you move really fast, you tend not to get hit very much. Like, you tend to, I think it's sort of notable that, like, you tend to get hit when you're running into the line of fire and not when you're moving away from it. And I don't know how much that is it literally making enemies less accurate if you're low on health, which it could definitely be doing, or if it's just the way that the weapons work. I do think the amount of health it spawns for you is one way that it modifies that.
Yeah. And I think that, the amount of health that you get back from a glory kill and the amount of damage that you take, because the number of times I've been killed is much lower than the number of times that my health has been at 7. Where my health is at 100 or like 100%, and then suddenly I'm at 40 in one hit, but then I won't go to 0, for ages.
I think that's one thing that's really remarkable about it is, like, I think it's actually, and it's a strange game, and it's solved, I think, or approached a solution to stuff that we're so used to in the way that FPS games are designed, or even just games, that you no longer think of them as a problem. Like, the purpose of a health bar should really be to create drama when your health is low. That is the reason to have it, rather than a fail state of another kind. The problem is that we don't really approach it that way. Players hoard, so they, low health is basically just seen as a failure already. Like, it's a marker on the journey to you're about to lose, rather than it being another kind of variable that can be switched on to kind of make you feel a particular way. And I think this actually gets towards it, and you actually have to train yourself out of believing, that monster knocked me all the way down from full health to 7 health, therefore I did this wrong. That could actually have been the right decision to make, and you've calculated that because you can also calculate how much health you can get back by a different way. Like, that's kind of something that it has in common with things like Bloodborne, for example, which is another game that did this well. And it's really exciting to see something kind of engage with that. Like, I think one of its weaknesses actually is it's so different to other FPS games in terms of what it's doing, that it does feel like the product of a kind of completely different branch thinking, which is weird because it's Doom. Like, and similar, like, it's down to the fact that, like, you know, all of its special abilities are bound to buttons that you would be using for other things, like, the flamethrower is on R, which is the weirdest place to put something in an FPS because you're constantly looking to tap R, and then, but it doesn't do anything like what you expect it to do because nothing needs to be reloaded ever, because of course it doesn't.
I was just going back to your point about the making you rethink what health is and things. What it also did, and this is something that Doom 2016 did as well, but by having pickups off the floor, like, you know, this was an old piece of design which was cast aside years and years ago because it was so arbitrary. Doom's putting items on the ground slowed down the game because it forced you to go and backtrack to go back to the stim pack that you knew it was there because now your health is low. And, you know, that was jettisoned, recharging health and all these other solutions. This, you know, resolutely puts stuff on the floor again. But because your health is so dynamic, it fulfills a totally different, function, which is to keep you moving. Like, you know, I've fought in this area. If I fight in that over area, there will be pickups over there which I haven't exploited yet. And now I'm fighting in a different place. The battle feels different. There are new opportunities, other things to learn. Everything's different. It just constantly feels mixed up, mashed around, just exciting. And I think, like, it's this game's kind of free hand with old ideas and making them completely different, which is, for me, is super exciting.
How have you found it so far, Marsh?
I mean, I feel the same way. I have to say, it did. One of the reasons I haven't got much further with it is that I didn't play it for a day, then I came back to it, and then all of the things that I'd forgotten just overwhelmed me. And I quit in some frustration. But
that's
I know
a weird thing to experience at Doom, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, it's the thing. I mean, I've seen some people saying how pure it is, but what? It's and there's so many ancillary systems to it. There's so much going on. I think something you said in chat the other day, Chris, was really good. Because I think all of us were experiencing that moment where you're overwhelmed, and there's so many different ways of unlocking things, and you go back to the hub, and then you're getting fucking, I don't know, some kind of void tokens to unlock Citadel biscuits or something like this.
A ghost has given me a big coin.
Exactly, and then all of these things are unlocking different things, and then all your weapons have alternate fire modes, and the alternate fire modes have alternate fire modes that you can switch between with a different button, and it's just too much. But then in chat you said, well, I mean, you kind of resigned yourself to that because you know what all you need to do really to earn all these different things is just to fight. And that's it, really.
Yeah. So sometimes you have to fight, and sometimes you have to turn left when it wants you to turn right, and go to the hidden thing. Yeah. Those are the two things.
Fight and finding secrets is basically the only two things really that you need to do to unlock everything. But I do think your comparison to a like fighting games like Devil May Cry is good. I think it's designed. I think if you're playing this as a sort of casual linear shooter, you may find it not scratching that itch, because I think it is much more about exploring that skill ceiling. Each battle is more or less the same sort of thing as the last one, in a way. I mean, it's the environments have different ways of exploiting them, and that's what's exciting about it. But it's essentially the same box of tricks that's just being reordered in a different arena each time as you progress through the game.
It feels like sometimes that idea is means that the areas can feel really bizarre. Like, it wants you to believe that you are in a place, like, you're in a weird space castle, or you're on, hell infected Earth. But it also is Bowser's Castle, by the way, and you're also doing monkey bars, and you're also doing this and that, and it can feel a bit bananas sometimes.
It is. It's so video gamey. That's what I thought was interesting. It's such a strange thing, because it feels like out of that, Doom 2016, which grew out of the cancelled Doom 4. Like, that game had this sort of weird, they had, the making of that game was very troubled, or the making of the new Doom, which went through several iterations. And they obviously had this come to Jesus moment where they realized, oh, this needs to be fun and a throwback and exciting and kinetic. Like, no one wants aim down sights Call of Doom, right? Like, and they had this moment, but that game exists sort of half and half, right? Like, it is one journey from A to B to hell. And, like, there are characters and, you explore, you kind of discover that world with the Doomslayer as you go. To some extent, he's a big, beefy Gordon Freeman, but, like, it's kind of has some structure like that. This one, I really like the opening, and I'm a sucker for that music and stuff. But then, like, it goes from 0 to 1,000,000 immediately, and it is geographically and aesthetically so, like, incredibly all over the place that it's impossible to really attach to it. In fact, one thing it feels like a story a story told through the levels of a multiplayer game. Like, a bit like was it the single player, almost like arcade mode in Quake Arena, where it was you just go from level to level, and ostensibly this is a world people inhabit, but it's not really. Yeah. It's a first person shooter verse, and like, that, it feels like that. Like, your Doom guy has an unexplained floating space station castle fortress, which I think is an out and out tribute to, among other things, Facing Worlds, right? Like, the classic Unreal Tournament map, you're kind of there, and they've blown out the scope of its reference, its sort of referentialness.
I don't think you'd find anybody from id or the Quake team saying that they took inspiration from Epic's game.
That.
But
no, well,
I suspect you're correct, nonetheless.
There's an out and out tribute to Unreal Tournament in that level. Like, they are, like, there's, well, what I'm saying is it's gone from being this thing that's very referential to Doom specifically to being something that is absolutely a tribute to, like, the FPSs of the 90s, basically.
Right.
Have you been in his den?
Yeah, this is what I was going to mention, the bookshelves. So, like, there's one bookshelf that has a little line of books on it. I thought this was really nice, actually, which games were there, because it's there's books with titles that reference different games, and there's Half-Life, Deus Ex, Doom, obviously, Quake, Unreal Tournament, Destiny, which surprised me to see it there.
Oh, I didn't know someone.
And System Shock, and Devil Daggers. I think
that's right. Yeah.
Devil Daggers being there is really lovely. Like, that was a really nice. That must be cool for those guys to.
I mean, well, that's
see.
the game that it's most like, I think.
Yeah,
the new Doom.
Yeah. But yeah, so you're on the space station, you don't know why, and then you're in a devil fortress, and you decapitate a man, you don't know who he is, and then the devil fortress was on the back of a giant, and the giant was, I don't know, punching a city, and then you're in the city, but the city's full of meat. And then you go to the Arctic. And but actually no, you don't. In the middle, you go to heaven, I think.
Heaven? I don't know what that place is. It does look a little kind of angelic in its iconography. Or this is the place with all the wolves. No, I guess, is it the Citadel of Slayers or something?
It's the Sentinel Keep or something.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, and like, it's absolutely all over the place. I kind of like that about it, but it's such a strange thing, because it's so hard to follow, and it's so dense with lore at the same time, but that's not why it's hard to follow.
Yeah, there is a huge amount of lore writing going on in the game, but it's like, how are you getting on with it? Sort of, and there are loads of layers and sort of aspects to its humor. There's a layer in its humor which I'm really kind of finding grating now, which is the corporate kind of hologram lady who talks about the mortally challenged, and it's used this joke a lot now, and it's time to stop.
Yeah, that bit, like it's like the checklist of its influences, like the Total Recall stuff. It don't work anymore. They've done that. They don't need to do that anymore. But when you bonk a zombie on its head so hard, its head goes down into its torso and it looks surprised and fall over, that's good every time.
It really is. It has a very, very good sense of slapstick.
There's like a little, a lot of the glory kills for, cacodemons involve pulling their eyes out, and it's grim, but it does this little, like, pop, kind of like weird cartoonish, almost, I've been playing this as well, Animal Crossing, sort of like you've just yanked a turnip out of the ground pop sound effect that is so at odds with its like now increasingly Warhammery kind of space gothic heavy metal fantasy thing.
Do you like the way he scrambles up walls?
Yeah, it just oh god, it's this. I was writing notes for this, and I wrote, "The Doom toddler has become too powerful," and I wrote this because there's something about who you are because he's got this little room now with his collection of electric guitars and his gaming PC and his toys.
And his Funko Pops.
And his Funko Pops.
This is something that Jake Castello wrote on VG247. She described it. He's basically a legend of ancient myth, but he's also a 30-year-old white guy with a Funko Pop wall.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know, but that's the thing is I can't decide whether he's like this sort of like, whether he is the final form of the teen to some extent, or whether he's more like, because there's something quite sort of, I don't know, like there's a kind of chaotic kind of toddler energy, I think, to him in the sort of like, I am going to destroy, right? Like crush and throw until it is done. Like I find it's almost charming. It's strange. Like it's such a bizarre sort of situation to put you in. Also because they decided to humanize them slightly more. Like you can see his face.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to mention was we talked about that first boss. How did you enjoy the tutorial that told you how the boss works? Because that's something that DMC would never do. Right.
Well, it does. This is one thing that's really interesting about it is every time you meet a new enemy that has a weakness, it just does a pop-up and says, "It's this, by the way."
Yeah.
Like that must be the product of some kind of some playtesting.
It's like a late in development. Like, oh Christ, nobody knows how to play it.
Yeah. Right. Like we've designed too many systems. I think that's one of the ways it feels. It definitely feels like the sandbox came first, and they weren't quite sure how to introduce people to it. Because they may have determined that the scope of the game they wanted to build, because these levels are massive as well, as the other thing. Like, they're so big. And, like, it feels like they had the option to build loads of massive levels, and maybe, like, cut 2 of them and do a linear opening that slowly brings in all these systems. And they decided, fuck that, we'll just introduce all the systems at once at the beginning, and people will cope.
Yeah, grasp the nettle.
Yeah, and given that it's got all these other bolt-on things like the cheat codes and the mastery levels and the remixed version of levels, there may be, and the fact it's basically got a season pass as well, but I don't think you have to pay for it. Like, there's a live serviciness about this, and it feels like a more linear opening, would have played against that. Like, they want to be able to repurpose every inch of the levels.
Yeah.
In multiple ways. Every arena could be done for different kinds of thing.
Yeah.
The fascinating thing, though, is it's really unlike anything else that I could think of, really, because it's so unlike Doom 2016. I really want it to deliver some big sort of designed moments, though. I think, like, you know, the moment where you get the BFG in Doom 2016, which is great. Like, it's such a great reveal.
Yeah,
and I'm hoping for more of that sort of thing rather than just sort of arenas and amazing combat, which is not a bad thing, but yeah.
I have to say, I'm left a bit cold by some of the stuff you do in between the arenas. Like, in the hell part, you are powering up these giant mechs to blow open the guts of giant demons so that you can go through the guts and access an arena. And that sort of very, very low-level environmental puzzle solving to find a big battery pack to put in the big battery hole to make the thing open is just it feels a bit like it's just kind of twiddling its thumbs whilst you get to the next the actual meat of the game.
Have you had enough of a rest yet? Okay,
I find the level after that one I thought I actually really liked. It's far more jump puzzly using all the traversal systems, but I liked that a lot more. Partly because that's actually teaching you a skill that will be useful. Like, I think that's the downside of the carry thing to thing puzzles is that's not something you ever do in an arena.
Yeah,
but
true.
When it teaches you to climb fast and double dash and grab monkey bars and make use of that to reach a particular place, and that actually is useful later on.
Oh gosh, that wall gripping is so... Yeah, I mean, aesthetically, I don't think any other game has gripped walls as tough, as hard as Doom 2020 does.
They look like the climbable walls look like the kinds of like sort of nibble rusks that you'd put in a budgie cage. Like, it's like he's doing his claws on them. You know what I mean? Like, maybe he's a cat. I don't know what he is.
He's either horrific, or it's sort of like the horror film style scuttling up a wall, or it's ineffably kind of childish, and I don't know which it is.
Exactly, the Doom toddler. Like, this is, yeah. Yeah, it's such a strange thing.
I am enjoying it. So I've just finished going back to kind of the feel of each of the areas. I've just done the area on Earth, which they actually showed during the initial reveals. So this is Meet Earth, and this area is totally vast. The others are big, and this is just bewilderingly vast. And you're collecting 3 keys, and it really does teeter on the edge of kind of, I cannot understand this area. I don't know where I saw it does that thing where you collect the key or you do something and then it shows you a door opening. With the door in this case is a mouth filled with teeth, but and you have that panic. Well, I don't know where that is. How am I going to find that? And then you do find it, but you don't feel very clever for it because you know that it's just in the next room, because they know that they've made something so inconceivably sort of large and hard to hold in your head that there's no way you're going to do it without them basically putting it next to where you are. And I didn't feel clever. Somehow I managed to pick my way through this level, but somehow I also didn't feel clever for it because it was always there, and that felt a shame. And and that's with memories of playing the original Doom and constantly getting lost and not knowing where to go on. So it does have a proud heritage in that kind of thing.
Yeah, have either of you played the multiplayer?
No.
I played a few rounds earlier. It's mad. It's a completely mad thing that they've made, which is. I don't know if it's fun. Do you know how it works?
No.
Okay.
So is it like the original where you're getting monsters to play as well?
Yeah. So I don't know how much so basically it's 2v1, two demons versus 1 Slayer.
Oh, okay.
And I played as the Doom Slayer twice, and basically. You're in an arena. It's an arena fight. If it's first to 3 wins. The demons win if the Doomslayer dies, and the Doomslayer wins if both demons are dead at the same time, because they respawn after 20 seconds. As the Slayer, it's normal Doom, with the exception of the 2 of the demons are controlled by, and they are demon types from the main game, are controlled by players. As the demons, I did the tutorial for this stuff. I actually tried it against people because I was too intimidated. It's this weird mix of playing Doom, but as like a specialist class with, limited movement, or you're massive, or you can fly or something, while also playing like quite complicated, like hotkey based strategy game. Because each of you can summon the other kinds of AI controlled regular monsters. And you do this by selecting them like as you would a weapon, but with just on a UI, and then holding control while looking at the ground to bring them out. And so I know this is on my mind because I've played a lot of Animal Crossing this week, but because you have to you don't just sort of press buttons to add them to the game. You have to decide where they're going to be and almost like plant them. And so you're running around sort of harvesting and farming demons for this Slayer to fight. And then they've added all these mechanics like, if the player demons can get to the various pickups that monsters drop before the Slayer does, they can destroy them, on a cooldown, which allows them to deny the economy. Like, they're very aware of the economy of the game and how it functions, so they're expecting you to be sort of strategically aware of how to screw up someone's, survival by taking away the health that they're relying on, that kind of thing. And they can also deploy like special abilities. They have loadouts, like they can create healing zones for themselves and stuff. And then between every round, everyone gets an upgrade, and it's just, there's so much going on. Like, it's quite fun, but completely overwhelming. And I kind of wonder about the utility or viability of 2v1 as a format, partly. Because it sounds like if you had 3 of you and you wanted to, I think 3 people is perfect, because it's 3 of you, you can mix up the teams, you can have to take turns being the Slayer. 4 people, you're shafted, basically. And 2 people is a weird one, because I guess you could go and be demons together and fight random Doom Slayers from the internet. But it just seems like a bit of a weird group to try and arrange for it. But it is, and it's interesting. I really, I don't know, jury's completely out on it. And obviously the fundamental mechanics are so good that it kind of helps, but yeah.
Is it going to be the only multiplayer mode that's going to come through in it? Because I agree, it does. It's so non-standard and kind of a social that I can't really see that it would have much of a life. Because I don't think the multiplayer in Doom 2016 did, held particularly strong over time.
No, I don't think it did. But that was fairly straightforward as well. Yeah, I don't know. Real weird.
Time will tell.
Is it time to do some questions from questions?
Yes, it is. Yes. Yes, it is. It is. Yes. This is strange because I've just got them open in my browser in front of me, and there's none of the normal kind of messing with a phone or having to turn them 360 degrees away from the microphone to look at them or something. It's convenient. I'm not sure how I feel about it. Basically, this change is scary. Why am I still talking? Andrew writes, "Good evening, guys. I apologise that I couldn't think of a decent pun. Please don't worry about that at all. And Andrew has a question. Andrew has a long and very lovely email, but we're going to skip to the question, which is, do you have a podcast game? By that, I mean a game or genre that you specifically throw on to either relax and listen to podcasts or just relax in general. Mine tend to be driving games in the vein of Euro Truck Simulator or more recently Mud Runner. With the latter, I just enjoy the experience of dragging a couple of tons of logs on a Soviet-era truck through simulated knee-deep mud while listening to the disembodied voices of people discuss what happened to Sonic Dogs in Half-Life 2. As an aside, I'm also very excited for its sequel, SnowRunner, but that's another digression in an already long email, so I'll leave that be. Additionally, what podcasts are you listening to at the moment? Any standouts you would recommend? Apologies for the long email, I hope it makes sense, and I hope the question isn't too boring. I look forward to listening to you talk about the latest hot gaming news as the world slowly quarantines itself. Kind regards, Andrew. P.S. Little Grey Cells or CNC D&D? I don't know whether that last part was which one of them will come back, or which one you prefer. Well, stuck inside a lot at the moment. I did actually successfully use Roll20 for the first time this week to run a tabletop role-playing game. I'd love to do more of that. I did, yeah.
Yeah, we did a low-tech Discord one earlier this week as well.
It's good. Sophie's Dice, really good dice throwing simulator.
Oh, I came up with a different solution. It was even more pretty, but our GM will never accept it. But regardless,
podcast games.
Yeah, driving. So I was thinking, I like this question because, there is a very specific kind of game for me that works, and it is driving games. So I can do track driving games and truck driving games. They're both good pod games. There's a sort of a level of activity with driving games, are perfect for you have enough of your brain just looking for something else to latch onto while doing it, and driving games is just a lovely thing to do.
I don't really listen to podcasts at all anymore. Really, at least not while I'm at my computer. But I do, if I'm having a morning where I'm or editing a pod for any other reason. I do play a lot of Destiny. I know it's a very easy answer for me, but I do actually find that quite a relaxing way to spend time, is to go through audio edits while shooting the spacemen, finishing off the space bounties, acquiring the space numbers.
Yeah, it sort of occupies the same sort of level of brain activity, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's also games I can play while essentially on the phone to someone else, basically. This is exactly the same thing.
Do you not listen to pods while painting Warhammer?
No, not really. I tend to, I went through a long period of listening to basically exclusively live play D&D podcasts, chiefly the Penny Arcade Adventure Incorporated C-Team stuff, because I really like that. But I just have stopped. Like, if I'm painting or doing the dishes or cooking, I tend to either listen to music or I have, like, YouTube stuff on in the background, or like video essays and things like that now. Tend not to listen to pods. No, nothing against the medium, he said, recording a podcast. But yeah, just not my go-to anymore.
As a recommendation, I've been listening to the Boring Talks, which are really good. Don't know if you come across them, but they're like...
You've been listening to my Boring Talks all evening, Alex.
That's why I enjoy them so very much. But this is like... They're between around 20 minutes long, and they're just somebody talking about something that's ostensibly boring, but because they have a deep interest in it, it's just interested. So to listen to the moment, there's one on data centers, there's one on crinoline ladies, the one on teletext was good. The sounds of computer games loading, and that was done by Keith Stewart, who we know from Gamesland.
Well, there was one that you particularly recommended to me. That was really good.
Did I?
Yeah. Oh, it was about the silences on the Watergate tapes.
Oh yeah, yep. That was another one. Yeah.
It's really good. That's really interesting. I mean,
it really was.
And there's nothing boring about any of these things, but it's Watergate tapes, and there are parts of the Watergate tapes that are very, very evidently missing, and there's a lot of conjecture and analysis as to what might be missing and why. Going down to the very technical details of what it sounds like for one of the recording devices to be turned off, and the texture of the silence that it creates, and things like this. It's very good.
Yeah. They've all got their individual flavour, each of the ones, but they're maintaining a very high standard.
Lovely. Any pod recommendations from you, Mush?
I mean, I haven't listened to that many podcasts recently. I used to listen to an awful lot of This American Life, but in recent years, This American Life, because it deals with, American lives in the present, have become a reflection of the terrible dystopia which I generally wish to escape using media. But you can go back into its massive archive and find such gems as the Squirrel Cop episode, which is truly one of the greatest stories ever told.
The things we thought were problems a couple of years ago. Too much squirrel crime. Like, I would love those days back. I'm not going to lie to you.
There's also an episode, I forget the name, I think the episode's called Doppelgangers, but the segment that you're particularly interested in is could be synopsized if it's not called Squid or Bung, which is a very classic and troubling story. So Good.
Our next question is actually kind of a technical one, so I'll get through quickly, but it's from Derek, who writes, quick note on a technicality. I use Podbean. For some reason, CNC isn't up to date on there. The last podcast showing is from December. Hope you can sort this out at some point and get to my ears that bit quicker until the collapse of civilization, which is due in July or August. Cheers, Derek. So, I don't really know what Podbean is, but there has been, no technical change to the way the podcast is uploaded or distributed, that I know of. So unless a WordPress update has broken something or something like that, I really don't know what this is. So the reason for reading this out on air is essentially, if anyone else is having trouble, well, actually you're not, clearly, because you're listening to this. If anyone else is getting... Good job, Chris. If anyone else is having trouble with this kind of thing, do send us an email and let us know, but probably need more details on just what you're using and when, because whether it's an RSS issue or something like that, nothing has changed. So to troubleshoot it, we kind of probably need a little bit more info than that. But I'll see if we can sort it out. In the meantime, you can always listen on YouTube as well. The next question comes from Aidan, who writes, Hello. Is Marsh related to Susie Dent? Was he a weatherman in a previous life? Plangent? Dolorous? Catabatic? This sort of frontogenesis is unacceptable. Love the pod, Aidan. Only one of those things is a tribes map.
Really? Which one?
Catabatic.
Catabatic.
Yeah, well, that makes sense in tribes.
Yeah.
What does catabatic mean?
It comes in meteorological terms to mean a descending wind, very strongly descending wind. So a catabatic wind is usually one that starts at the top of a mountain and rushes down at a great speed. But in terms of Greek myth, which is how I encountered the term, it generally means a descent into the underworld. So the story of Orpheus is a catabatic story. Obviously, on the return journey, it is not catabatic; it's anabatic, but only for one of them.
That's what happens if you've got a peanut allergy, I think. Yeah, I was thinking about the word catabatic recently, partly because of tribes, and also partly because I fell down a YouTube hole while reading about the Dyatlov Pass incident.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Which is another catabatic wind. Is a theory there. This is a lot of hikers who vanished in the Urals in 1950s.
Yeah.
It's a good word. Where do you get all these good words from, Marsh? Is it books?
Yeah,
he's sometimes. A reader. He's a goddamn reader.
I'm a big admirer of Susie Dent, and I'm a real fan of etymology. I don't claim to have any great learning on the subject, but I get really excited by the origins of words. I find it very pleasurable to look them up. So I have two massive etymological dictionaries that I've been trying to find a home for, because I've been trying to shed books, and it's very, very hard for me to part with these two gigantic tomes. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with them.
I hate words. Stupid.
Well, we're progressing towards a kind of grunt-based system of podcasting for a long time now, and if the quality of our test recordings earlier, this has been now about an hour and 10 minutes of which actually makes me sound like KK Slider from Animal Crossing trying to throw up.
Alex has only so far been able to utter the word Dijon.
What's your favourite kind of mustard?
Dijon.
We have fun, don't we? Even in these times.
Especially in these times.
Yeah, this is the first time we've spoken in 2 weeks.
It is, yeah. Well, we've virtually spoken.
That's true.
That's all I need.
People least affected by this react to this. That's my new YouTube channel. Alright, final question comes from Mads, who writes, Dear C&C, I used to care deeply about doing missions the right way, i.e. perfect stealth, headshots, nut shots, whatever the game would posit as perfection. Nowadays I've embraced the Joe Brand school of thought. Fuck it, that'll do. Maybe it's 2 parts laziness to 1 part anti-save scumming idealism to 1 part life is imperfection homespun philosophy. Maybe it's just age and time constraints. However, games feel made for the perfectionists and the role players, rather than muddle-throughers like me. My in-game evaluations and achievements are an endless row of bronze medals and patronising taking part diplomas. Should muddling get more recognition and celebration, or should I just learn to ignore the extrinsic motivations? I can't deny I would love for an NPC to clap me on the shoulder and say, you did kind of fuck that up, didn't you? You lost over half the hostages and you didn't prevent the bridge from getting blown up, but I'll let you in on a secret. Nobody gives a shit about the secondary objectives anyway, so let's go get a beer. All the best, Mads. I think Mads is correct.
Yes. I'm a fan of muddling. Yeah.
I think games have gotten better, like as to why he feels, easier to muddle now. I think games are better at supporting muddling than they were in the past. I think games in the past were very exacting. Like they had a very specific way they expected you to play them, and they would be punitive if you failed to do that. I think today, I remember many conversations with Marsh over the years about how stealth games are good when they let you recover from a fuck up. I think like in the early stealth games, usually you wouldn't, if you could recover from it, you would feel like a failure. But now there's more like a good stealth game is one that has fun in the act of recovering from a failure. And I think that's emblematic of that kind of that trend.
Yeah. I think there's, well, I do think this is something that I've really appreciated about Animal Crossing this week. I appreciate we did a mini pod about Animal Crossing over the weekend, Pip and I, that you can listen to right now if you wish for more hot takes about that game. But it's very good at just being pleasant to you whatever you do. Like, that you can't really fail, you can't really succeed except on your own terms. But it's but it's not that nothing happens. It's just that the characters are always just pleased with whatever it is that you've done, and expecting you to proceed at your own pace. They may react to say, "I can't believe you got this done the same day I asked you to do it," but there's no benefit to that. And similarly, there's no benefit to taking a week either. So that, I think, is a nice way it's a nice palate cleanser after a lot of games where I think developers feel pressure to acknowledge extremely effective or impressive play, which implicitly makes everyone else feel worse, I think, when you know that there are rewards or outcomes that you're not getting.
Yeah.
Like, I think self-set goals are naturally a good counter to this.
Yeah.
Like, Minecraft is kind of a perfect example of a muddling game, I think, right? Like, no one's there to reward you explicitly for...
You started to build a hut, and then you kind of gave up, and you kind of did something else instead, and that's all fine.
Yeah, it's fine, actually. Any other good muddling games you can think of?
Apparently not.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, Alex and Marsh, we did kind of fuck that question up, but it doesn't matter, does it?
It doesn't matter. I think in many ways it's been good that we fucked it up.
Alright.
What's going on?
I don't know. I was waiting for something to give me something like I wanted to fucking Doom Guy grapple something so that I could end the podcast. But there was just like nothing there, and I was in the void. Like in real life, there could be some physical emoting, but no. Regardless of our successes or failures as people, that is all of the questions that we have time for. This is going to be obviously a shorter pod than usual, and apologies for that. Largely it's just getting used to this format. I don't really want to invest in a super long pod while we're still unsure about how well this is going to work. But we will be back next week, and we'll continue to find ways to produce content while stuck in our homes.
Stuck in the mud?
Exactly. I don't live in the mud, Alex, but if you would like to send us a question for a future episode of the podcast, you can do so by emailing us at questions@crateandcrowbar.com. You can also tweet us at Crate and Crowbar. You can find this podcast on YouTube at youtube.com/Crate and Crowbar. And you can, if you wish, support the podcast on Patreon. Thank you very much to everybody who continues to support the podcast. You can find out more details about the podcast Patreon at patreon.com/Crate and Crowbar. That's more or less it from us. Stay safe. Wash your hands. Make sure you set the men on fire before you punch them for the armor points. I've been Chris Thurston.
And I have been Alex Wiltshire.
I continue to be Marsh Davis.
Thanks for listening.